Hey everybody, well, welcome to week 4, and this week we're going to continue talking about the origins of policing. Last week we talked about Peel, and you had assignments, discussion boards, or written assignments about Peel. Now, this week one class will get a written assignment, and that you don't have to do a draft, although the purpose of the draft was to show you that by writing it out and going through a process to produce a document, often you come up with a better product, and I hope you did. I'm working on trying to get those done. I had the drafts due, or the drafts were all done, I should say. For those of you in the other course that had your written assignment with the draft last week, I'm getting those done. I'm back through that, and I'll start pounding those out, and I should have those out pretty quickly. So with that, this week we're going to talk about the eras of policing, and there's a couple of really important issues here for you to think about. And the first thing is I'd like you to think about, why do we have different eras? And what brings them about? Now, Kelly Moore will talk about strategic weaknesses in the different models, different eras that they talk about. And that should kind of start to give you a hint. When you look at the Barlows, the political economy of community policing, they look at it in a much different fashion. So things for you to think about. The Barlow article is there for you to do a couple of things, one of which is to think about peer-reviewed articles and the fact that you look at Kelly and Moore, and that became a centerpiece for community policing. And then you look at the Barlows, and they're being critical of community policing. Having seen a department and a profession develop, I think that there's a lot of truth in what the Barlows say. So as you work through that, I hope that you can you'll see some of the issues with that. This week we talk about these eras and how they changed. Really important for you to take a moment and think about the historical perspectives of each. The idea of the political era, and the fact that the general consensus wasn't that we needed to develop a police organization to help us, or to stop crime and to get through the whatever social upheaval is. It was about maintaining order, and then, as people have a tendency to do, once they saw the possibilities for garnering support for political people and keep them in jobs, it turned into a very political organization. We talk about corruption during this era, and a lot of that comes from the idea of low pay. And in Southern California, it's a little bit difficult to even consider low pay, because most agencies are paid fairly well on a national level. I did see an article, and if I find it, I think I have it in a file, an article where an entire police department in the Midwest, which was like 4 people or 5 people, but the entire department quit at a city council meeting because their equipment was bad. They didn't have cars that worked, and the safety equipment was bad, and they were making minimum wage. Pretty amazing when you think about that. So think about the historic basis. When you look at Kellington Moore's era in the 60s of the start of the rise of, they call it the reform era. I think the idea of professional era of policing is better. When they talk about that, they're talking in an expansive method. I mean, it's a huge change to where police departments gain a bit of independence from the political regime. Now, I don't want anybody to think that police departments, are operating completely autonomously from the political situation. And there's a lot of pressure, especially when you get city council people that may be less inclined to follow that and more inclined, follow that meaning not pressuring the police department, but their own personal issues. I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can find several different videos of public officials who have been stopped for DUI or speeding, and they simply expect different and better treatment than the public, and because that's just what they demand. And you can see that they often get embarrassingly out of hand for what's going on. So professional era came along, and it was, as a result of some social issues, which I hope you can pick out from the reading in the chapter and then the slide and the supplemental reading. And you can look at those factors. Now, halfway through the reform or professional era, the police had distanced themselves from a lot of issues that were going on in the community, the political pressure, trying to maintain the people in office so that they could maintain their jobs. Pendleton Act, 1880s had been around for a long time and really changed a lot of how police departments operated. Well, then the next thing that comes along is the introduction of crack cocaine. And crack cocaine really changes a lot of what goes on in society. Fairly quickly, a significant, substantial rise in violent and property crimes. And I mean, that happened relatively quickly. And it was extreme. If you go to different websites or just do a search on crime rates, you can see where in the 90s the crime rate is here. Then professional policing comes along, and there are some crime control methods that are put into place, and the crime goes down, dramatically goes down over the course of years. And it, so low that it was at historic lows up until about 2013, 2014, when societal pressures start to change things again. Don't get that reduction in crime confused with community policing. Because I'll tell you right now, for the most part, the police function very much the same in the community model as they did in the professional model. The idea of officers being reviewed based on productivity, objective measures of performance, arrest citations, those kind of things. So that has continued, even though there's a general discussion about how there should be changes and the police should do other things and all of these things. So I'm not really sure how that gets reconciled. The Barlows have some comments on that, which I think are important for you to look at and take into consideration in this discussion. Community policing is something that started in the late 1990s. You started to see that, grow more. Look at the date of Eras of Policing by Kelling and Moore, and a cynic might say that that was a justification for community policing. The academic world at that time got very much involved in policing and being critical of policing and the lack of tightness with the community. So as you look through the different eras, make sure that you are you're aware with the different functions. And I would make sure that I studied the breakdown, the characteristics of each of these. Community policing, we'll talk about it quite a bit more directly later down the road. Now I just want you to have the idea of the general concepts surrounding community policing. One thing I found interesting in the discussion about Peel was how many people made comments that the police should, be focused on preventing crime, a big community policing idea. But nobody gave me any idea how that's going to happen. Can you prevent crime by being present at a location? Well, certainly that will move crime. It'll, in the term in crime analysis, is displace it. So let's say Long Beach, East Long Beach is having a vehicle burglary problem around school. So the police department, Long Beach PD, comes in and puts pressure on it, makes car stops, looks for people that are suspicious, maybe doesn't arrest anybody, but has a greater presence in the areas where vehicle burglaries occur. Well, the burglar goes, oh, okay, I think I'll go to Los Alamitos, and moves his area of operation to a different location, displacement. Kind of an interesting idea. But I was a little disappointed that I heard so many people that, crime, just prevent crime. Well, I think it's a great opportunity for you to keep in the back of your mind when people, politicians, offer solutions, but the solution's hollow. They don't tell you how that's going to happen or how it's going to work, or they presume how those things are going to happen or work. So think a little bit about that. I don't want to make this too long, but the PowerPoint is pretty long this time. The slide deck is pretty long. So other things that you should be concerned about, you studied it in 110 or 100 or whatever your intro class was. You maybe had another class where UCR, Uniform Crime Reports, and all the various reporting methodologies are talked about. Again, still really important. This dark figure of crime, the idea that so much crime goes unreported, and whether or not, and what that comes from. Why do people not report crime? Is it because they don't want to bother the police? They don't think that their issue is big enough to involve the police? Whatever that is, I'm not quite positive. But those are all things for you to consider in this chapter. You've got a discussion board, and you have a written, one class is a discussion board, one class has a written assignment. The written assignment will not have a draft due this time. The next draft that will be due is when we do the last one, the last written assignment, which is of the same length and such. but hopefully you've learned a little bit about what I'm looking for, the fact I want you to expand on the prompts. Answering the prompts gets you a C. Answering the prompts gets a C, which can go down from there depending upon the quality of the writing, quality of your resources. So make sure you are aware of what type of resources you can use. Some issues there this week, but with all of that, I think this is going to be an interesting week for you, especially when you try to compare Barlow's and the areas of policing and killing and more. With that, have a good week, and I will see you in class.